Hello, welcome to your regular program, Project Africa. Project Africa on Ben Television is about development drive and good governance. On the set with me today is a personality of note in Nigeria. It's the Assistant Secretary to the ongoing National Conference in Nigeria, James Akpandem, who's also a seasoned journalist. You are welcome to Project Africa.
Thank you very much.
National Conference in Nigeria. Could you just tell our viewers all over the world, what does it entail? What does it mean to achieve?
Well, every country has its own issues. And Nigeria as a country has been going through a number of issues over time. And Nigeria is made up of a number of ethnic nationalities, major ethnic groups, minority ethnic groups, different religious persuasions and all that. And when you have a mix of people like that, there are always issues. And those issues are likely to affect governance and also by extension affect development and progress of any country. And it is not different here. And over time, we've been having discussions, conferences, seminars to look at the problems of those issues that are militating against the normal progress of the country. So at the point, people have been agitating. Yeah. In any case, this agitation is not new. The agitation for better governance, better situation in the country, issues that will bring people together, unite people, make for progress, make for good governance, make for economic prosperity and all that, had always been there. And if you look at the various constitutional conferences that we've had since the country was amalgamated, even before the amalgamation of 1914, we've been having series of this kind of situation. But at this point, because of agitations that's been on, the president now decided, I said, let the people themselves come together, sit down, discuss issues that have been bothering them, look for solutions, and then advise government on what to do so that we will have a country that is united, that is progressive, and where everybody will live in peace and prosperity. Basically, that was the essence. That was why this conference was put up for Nigerians to discuss whatever issues they have, come up with solutions, and then advise government on what to do.
Looking at the composition of the delegate that made up of the conference, will you say Nigerians are well represented?
I don't think there is any defined group in this country that was not represented in that conference. If you look at the galaxy of people, the composition, the groups, you could find any group, fundamental group, within that setup. You have elder statesmen, retired military security officers, you have retired civil servants, you have politicians, you have ex-lawmakers, ex-governors, professionals, the academia, the youth, women, people living with various kinds of disabilities. Every segment of the society was represented in the conference, even religious groups.
But there were some dissenting voices from the onset that they were not adequately represented. We have some groups, we have some people. We were even told some of them even went to street to protest that they were not, were adequately represented. How do you consider this?
I think it's routine. It's a routine situation in this country. Okay. There is no way you will do anything and people will not protest. So it wasn't an issue per se. It came up, it was resolved, and the conference went on.
Will you say the conference has lived up to its billing?
Any discernible person living in this country and who has been following this conference will say yes. Now at the end of the conference, we must have taken more than 600 resolutions on different issues, different thematic issues. There were 20 standing committees that had different thematic areas. And those areas are areas that have to do with the day-to-day political, social, and economic well-being of this country. And at the end, 19 of those committees, their reports went on smoothly and everything was agreed by consensus. The 20th committee, almost every issue raised was agreed by consensus except 2. And those 2 were eventually settled by a resolution. And of course, you see, that is where the problem is. When people say because those issues were not addressed frontally on the floor of the plenary, then it was not resolved. No, it's not true. There was a resolution. And that resolution acknowledged the fact that there was need to increase the derivation revenue for oil producing areas and producers of other mineral resources in this country. It also agreed that there was need for intervention funds to be used in rehabilitating and developing areas that have been affected by insurgency and conflicts. There was also an agreement that government has a responsibility to aid the diversification of the economy by also developing other mineral resources. What was now left for a technical committee that was recommended was to work out the details of how this can be done. People now see that as abdication of responsibility. No. We cannot sit down here and be assigning percentages arbitrarily, because that is what it would have amounted to. You give 10% here, 15%, 20%, 30%, without also taking into consideration areas that are not right before you. At the end of the day, if you add up these percentages, it's likely going to be more than 100%. So when you get yourself into that kind of situation, what do? So you don't have an issue, put yourself in a position that will make it impossible for what you are recommending to be implemented. So to be on the reasonable side, yes, we agree that this should be done, this should be done, this should be done. But since everything is not on our plate, set up a technical committee to take a global look at the allocation of resources and then work out the percentages.
I was coming to that before you go to that area, because the issue of the derivation and other intervention fund almost say torn the conference apart. And people are saying if the conference had to also recommend it to the president to put up a technical committee to address what you just explained right now, that possibly the conference, could not say to have a successful story.
No, it depends on who is looking at it. What is your mindset from the word go? There are people who did not believe that this conference will succeed.
Okay.
There are people who also thought the conference was not necessary. There are people who also had the opinion that even if recommendations are made, it will end up in files and in lockers like other reports. So people came with different perceptions about what the conference is all about and how the conference is going to end. So it depends. If you are one of those who assumed that the conference was not necessary in the first place or was not going to succeed, what you will see at the end is that the conference did not succeed. But if you had a positive mind from the onset, you look at the issues from a global perspective. What were the issues that were before the conference? If you have, let us just assume that there were issues with the last committee. You had 20 committees, 19 had no problem. One had a slight issue of disagreement in a few areas, which was eventually resolved, and you now say it's a failure. What is a pass mark? What is a pass mark? If you have 19 over 20 clean, then a slight disagreement, which, of course, is something that was envisaged. This issue has been contentious from day one. Even in the last 6 constitutional conferences, that's always been an issue. So it is not a new thing, and it is not that there was no resolution. There was a resolution. But because percentages were not assigned, people now say, oh, it was a failure. No.
Before we go to the implementation of whether the referendum may be through the National Assembly, to a man on the street of Nigeria, what are the benefits are we taking home from the conference?
I can put it the other way around. Why was a confab set up?
Okay.
It was to resolve issues. And these issues have to do with the people, has to do with the country, has to do with the polity. So what the people are taking home basically will be that the issues that have been bothering us have been discussed. Recommendations have been made. We are now looking forward to implementation. I've heard a number of people say, look, if what have been discussed and recommended are implemented, I think that we will go a long way from where we are now. So that's what anybody will want to take home. That there's hope.
Via don't go away. My guest has been James Akpandem, Assistant Secretary Communication at the ongoing national conference in Nigeria. We'll be taking a short break and to be back. Thank you for staying tuned. Wherever you are watching all over the world, you are welcome back to your show, Project Africa. And today we are looking at the merit or the benefit of the ongoing national conference in Nigeria, the most populous nation in the continent of Africa. And my guest is the Assistant Secretary in charge of communication of the conference, James Akpandem. You are welcome back to Project Africa.
Thank you.
Yeah. The conference, as we speak right now, has suspended its plenary or has concluded its plenary. Then the issue is, where does the report of this committee go to? How does it get implemented?
Well, the conference is not suspended.
Okay.
We have completed everything that has to do with plenary and committees. And so what we are doing now is compiling the report. And when the reports are ready, the delegates will now be called back to certify the report. And I've heard people talk about ratification.
Okay.
It's not ratification. It is certification. It's just for them to say, okay, the report is okay, so we pass it. No new issues will be discussed.
Okay.
No new issues will be introduced.
Okay.
So once they say that is a representation of what we discussed and recommended, we now do a clean copy and then present it formally to the president.
Mr. Pandem, in my course of rapport with some of the delegates, I got to know that the recommendation are in three places. Maybe one for the one the executive could implement directly, then possibly some session has to go to National Assembly. Could you just throw more light on this?
Basically in this kind of conference,
Yeah.
You would discover that the issues were wide-ranging.
Okay.
Some of them were policy issues, some were constitutional issues, and some were legal issues. So in compiling the report, we'll have to separate the policy issues from the constitutional issues, then the legal issues. Of course, the policy issues are the ones that government can implement without recourse to the National Assembly.
Yeah.
But the rest too, the legal and constitutional, depending on the issues, will have to go to the National Assembly, or the government will have to work with the National Assembly to actualize that. Now, basically, the constitutional issues may have to do with the amendment of the present constitution, because there are constitutional issues that have been raised. And of course, there are some sections of the present constitution that have been amended. Now, of course, we also have legal issues that will tell legal drafting of new laws and all that stuff. Of course, all this will basically have to go through the National Assembly, and the government will have to work with the National Assembly to get that actualized. And now there is also the issue of whether or not the conference is going to produce a new constitution. Now, it depends on the issues. Now, if we have enough issues that will warrant a new constitution, it can be done. But again, one explanation, because people assume that when you are talking about a new constitution, the conference will sit down, bring out some fresh sheets of paper and start writing a new constitution. No. A new constitution in this sense would be the incorporation of all the new laws that have been brought out here into the current constitution. And then the constitution will now be redesignated. Instead of, like, for instance, 1999 constitution as amended, it will now be 2014 or 2015 constitution. But at the end of the day, when you look at the two, it will be basically the same, because the first one is you take the constitution and then you add the amendments. Maybe as an addendum, you add the amendments. But this one, you now pick and incorporate the amendments, and then it looks like a new constitution, but basically it's the same thing. The old, because there has been this issue of the preamble, we the people. Now people are saying, look, this constitution was not made by us, it was made by the military. So it's like somebody's trying to deceive somebody by saying we the people. Now, if you want to take ownership of the constitution now, so what you now do is incorporate everything, designate it as a new constitution, and then own it up, and it becomes we the people, the constitution prepared by we the people of Nigeria.
On final note, we learned recently that some group of people are trying to kill, kill the report of this confab. Is it possible for any group to relay this report and get it killed?
Well, I don't know which people you are talking about, but there are basic procedures here. We, as a conference, we have discussed, we have agreed on certain parameters, recommendations have been made to government. We will submit the report to government. Now, government has a responsibility now to work on the report, either to implement it or to not it. Now, whether a group of people are trying to kill it or not, it is neither here nor there. I mean, I cannot say anything about that, because in the first place, I don't know those who are going to kill it and how they are going to kill it and why they are going to kill it. Now, if you have all that, and let me also say one thing. This is a free society. People have freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom of association. I mean, you also have the right to defend yourself if you think that you are in a precarious situation, right? So if people meet and decide to do one or two things, so long as it is legal, it is constitutional, I mean, I don't see anything. I don't see anything to comment about.
When will the National Conference finally wind up?
What from our work plan? Once we get the report certified, we produce a clean copy of the report and present it to the president. Once that is done, it signals the formal conclusion of the conference. And we see all that happening in August.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for having us in your office. Viewers, we cannot just go beyond this point on the show today. My guest has been Mr. James Akpandem, Assistant Secretary, Communication, National Conference in Nigeria. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate this. Thank you.